All right, guys, so now that we have basically have a fake REST API running on our back end, we want to start to connect to that. Now, we're actually going to use the easy HTTP library that we created back in the asynchronous JavaScript section. So hopefully you've watched this all the way through, or you've at least watched that section. So I'm going to grab that file. So I have the project files for, it was 715 project files. We have our easy HTTP 3. We're using the version that we implemented async await. So what I'm going to do is open that file up. I'll open it with Sublime Text and bring it over. And then I'm actually going to copy everything in this file. So we'll just grab everything. And then we're going to make this into a module. So we're going to go to our source folder and say new file. I'm just going to call it http.js, and then we're going to paste that in. Okay, now in order to access these methods, these functions from another file, we of course need to export it. All right, so what we'll do is go down to the bottom here. We can leave everything as is, but we're going to go down to the bottom and we just want to say export const http equals, and then we're going to instantiate the class, so new easy http. That way we can bring this in and we can just say like http.get or .delete or whatever we want to use. So let's go ahead and save that, and then we're going to go to our main app.js file and we're going to import it. So we'll say import http from /http, and it's as easy as that to create a module and import it. Now I want to first work on getting the posts. So in the app.js, I'm gonna say get posts on DOM load. So I'm going to add an event here by saying document.addEventListener, and we want to listen for DOM content loaded, and then we want a function called get posts. Okay, so now we'll go down here and we'll say function get posts, and then this is where we want to use our HTTP module. So let's say http.get, and what we want to pass in here is our API, so which was HTTP localhost port 3000/posts, I believe. Yep. So this is the URL that we want to make the request to. So remember that the get method, if we look at it right here, takes in a URL, and it's going to give us back the response data. So let's pass that in like that. And then since this is an async method, the get right here, it's going to return a promise. And remember how we deal with promises, we do .then, and we'll also do .catch if there's any errors. So right here we'll just say error, and then we'll console.log the error. And then for the then, what I want to do is just for now, just get the data that it returns, and let's console.log it just to make sure that this actually works. So if we go to our front end, let's save. It's gonna load the dev server, and then if we look down here, we're fetching data. Okay, so we're fetching data from our backend API. And again, this URL, this could be some kind of Node API or Python or whatever it may be, and it's going to work the same way as long as it returns JSON and returns the correctly. Now we want these posts, we obviously don't want to just console log them, we want them to show in the UI in our application. So we're going to create a UI module. Okay, so in the source, let's say new file ui.js. And we're going to say class UI. Okay, we're still using object-oriented programming. And let's call a constructor, or create a constructor. And then I'm going to assign certain parts of the DOM to certain properties. So let's say this.post equals document dot query selector, and that had an ID of posts. All right, let's get the input field. So we'll say title input equals document dot query selector, and that has an ID of title. And then let's just copy this, make this a little bit easier. So next we have our body input, which has an ID of body. We have our ID input, that's the hidden field, remember that? So that'll be the ID of ID. And then we have our post submit button, and that has, it's actually a class this time, so we want to do dot post dash submit. And then I'm also going to set a property called form state. Now we're not going to get into this just yet, but I just want to set all the properties of this module, of this class. So we're going to set the default to add. That's the default state, to add a post. Okay, so now we want to create a method called show posts. And this is going to take care of actually displaying the post down here in the UI. So this will take in posts, and where we're going to call this is in the app.js. Instead of console logging data right here, we want to call that UI posts. Now before we can use the UI class, we have to export it. So let's go back to back to the UI module here, and then just export const UI equals new UI, and save. And then we can bring that into our app.js. So we can import UI from ./UI. Okay, it's as easy as that. And then down here, instead of saying console log, we're going to say UI dot show posts. And we're passing in the data because that's the post that's returned from this URL, from our back end. So we'll save that, and let's go back to our UI here, JS, and let's make sure that it's actually, this is being called. So we'll just console log posts. And you can see that it's now logging the post. So we know that this is being called. So now let's set it up so that we can output them into our UI. All right, now what I'm going to do is just set an initial variable for the output. Okay, you want to make sure you use let here because we're going to be reassigning it or appending to it. And then we're going to take the post that's passed in and loop through with a for each. In here, I'll just pass in an arrow. Okay, we can do that, and we'll say post for each one. And then let's take that output variable and append to it a template string. And then each post, I want to have a div with the class of card. Let's also do MB3, some margin bottom. And in here, let's do div class card body. And then inside the card body, let's put an H4, and we'll give this a class of card title. Okay, and this is where the post title will go. So we'll put in this syntax here, and we'll say post dot title. All right, and then under that we'll put a paragraph. Let's give this a class of card text, and these are just bootstrap classes just to make it look decent. Whoop. So in here, this will be the body. So post dot body, and we're going to have an update and delete, but let's just check this out for now. So down below the for each, we need to actually assign, so this dot post dot inner HTML equals the output variable, and save, and there we go. So now we're pulling these posts out from our back end. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and add the ID and update icons just to get it over with. So we're going to use Font Awesome for those. So under the paragraph, let's put in an A tag. href, we'll just set to hash, and then let's set class. We're going to set class edit for this one, and then also card link, which is just a Bootstrap class. Now we're going to need a way to access the ID so we know which one to edit. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a data attribute. HTML5 allows you to have custom attributes. You just have to prefix them with data dash. So it's going to be data dash ID. And then we're just going to throw in the post ID here by saying post.id like that. And then inside the A tag will be the Font Awesome icon. So this icon will be, let's see, this is the edit, so it's going to be FA and then FA-pencil. And then I'll just copy this whole link, and we want the delete. So this one will have a class of delete. And then again, we'll pass in the data ID attribute. And let's change the icon to remove. All right, let's save that. And there we go. So now we have an edit and a delete. Now I also want to have a custom style sheet. So what we'll do is we're going to create in the root here a folder called assets. And inside there we'll create a, not a file, let's create a folder called CSS. And then let's create a file called style.css. All right, and then in here, all I want to do is I want to set the delete icon to be red. So the class of delete, we're going to say color will be red. Save. Now it's not going to show yet because we haven't included this CSS file. So let's go to our index.html and go up to the top here. Let's go right here and put in a link, and we'll set this to assets/css/style.css. And now you can see the delete is red. All right, and we have a custom style sheet to work on if you want to add styles or whatever. All right, so I think that's a good place to stop. We've accomplished quite a bit in this video. We created our HTTP module. We created our UI module. We took the posts from the back end, from the REST API, and we inserted them into the UI. All right, so in the next video, what I want to do is work on adding a post. I want to be able to fill this form out and add a post to our structure, to our API, and we'll go from there.